So very exciting opportunity, hence the name Talking Opportunities, to start a series of conversations with people all across the board. Really interesting, business leaders, entrepreneurs, students, chefs, adventurers, apprentices, and really the whole concept of this is about being able to share the experiences and stories and lessons that people have learned that can help other people create opportunities, in their lives, and to help other people, help create opportunities, for them and and for their friends, and just go out into the world in a very positive way. I'm very, very fortunate. I get to talk to some wonderful people. Some years ago, I was honoured to be running an event, which was attended by Will Whitehorn, who at the time was the president and CEO of Virgin Galactic. I asked Will if he would give me some time to come and talk to me, us, and share some experiences, which he's very grateful for him to have done this morning. So without further ado, Will Whitehorn, how are you this morning?
Good morning. How are you? Dan, I was president of Virgin Galactic, and actually I was not CEO because we didn't have a CEO in those days. It was still a project. I actually appointed the first CEO of Virgin Galactic, a very nice guy who's still there called George Whitesides, who's the ex-chief of staff of NASA, and that's when I left in late 2010, early 2011. And it's funnily enough, we're sitting here in a world of coronavirus with the aviation industry in tatters, an industry that I grew up in originally, having been at British Airways as a helicopter crew, and then Thomas Cook as a graduate trainee, and then finally joining Virgin. And I was reminded the other day about Virgin Galactic and my leaving speech, and the fact that when I left Virgin Galactic, I actually predicted that one day Virgin Galactic would be worth more than Virgin Atlantic. And all the room laughed, but I actually meant it. They thought I was joking.
You got it right.
It's strange. In the last week, Virgin Atlantic has, I'm glad to say, been rescued from bankruptcy by Sir Richard Branson and a group of other investors. And it's interesting to me that, in fact, not only is Virgin Galactic, which is quoted on the US stock market now, worth more than Virgin Atlantic, it's worth more than the whole of the rest of the Virgin Empire. And not only that, Richard Branson sold a small stake in it the other week in order to fund the rescue of Virgin Atlantic. And all of that before it's actually flown a commercial customer. It's only been in test flight. It's been to space, it's taken people to space, but actually they don't start flying commercially until later this year. So there you go, there's a story.
So, mate, that whole concept, and I don't know whether this is something that comes into your mind very much, but there are many, many people who are very successful, like you, in all sorts of different areas, who, when you ask them about their kind of journey to being where they got to, often or not, they'll say that there was something they had or something they did many, many years before, where they'd either written it down or they'd had a real kind of, and I'm not talking about sort of magical attraction, all that, but just that real focus that really kind of drives people. Is that something that, you thought about? Were you sort of very driven towards doing that?
No.
That puts that out the window. It's all gone.
I mean, I was in a gang at school called the Space Gang, and years later, the Glasgow Herald had been phoning up people trying to get some kind of dirt on me for an article they were doing about me in the magazine. And they met one of my old school colleagues who said, "Of course, he was in the Space Gang at school." The guy assumed that was because we were all interested in space. It was actually because we used to go behind the bike sheds and have a fag. But I was not driven. But it's strange how life leads you in directions. My dad was an architect, so he obviously had an engineering bent. My grandfather was actually quite a well-known inventor, invented the petrol-electric car, and actually invented what Elon Musk calls the Hyperloop. He called it the Sphericar. He filed a patent for that train in 1932. So I was brought up in a family where, I had brothers tinkering under cars. I had a motorbike, a moped at 16, a motorbike at 17. I would be constantly taking the cylinder heads off, mending this fix, trying to get it to go faster. But I didn't. I mean, I was fascinated by history and economics, and particularly business and industrial history. I found it absolutely fascinating. So I studied that at university. And after university, it was very hard to get jobs in 1979, 80, 81. I'd gone to university very young. I graduated by the time I was 20 with an honours degree in history, an MA honours, and I'd been student union president by 21, and I couldn't get a job. So I was in Aberdeen in Scotland, and this job was advertised in the Aberdeen Press and Journal. Helicopter crew required for North Sea oil rigs. And I thought, yes.
Why not? Why not?
So I applied. I'd learnt to fly at 16 as an RAF cadet. So I had some knowledge of flying. I was interested in flying. I was interested in anything that moved. You know, I turned up on my motorbike for the interview, you know, with it all souped up. And the guy, and you know, and he said, but you have just graduated with a degree. He said, what do you want to do this for? I said, can't get a job. I guarantee to you, if you give me this job, I will stay for 3 years.
Yeah.
And he gave me the job. I did my 8 weeks of training. I did paramedics course, so we could do search and rescue work, the helicopter escape course, the underwater ditching, learned to scuba dive, and I stuck with the job for them. And then in 1984, I finally get an interview for a graduate traineeship with Thomas Cook, 3 years after I'd left university. And I took that because I was interested in travel, and I was interested in the industry and its history. I was interested in Thomas Cook because Thomas Cook, like, if you study the history of 19th century, you know, the economy in Britain, Thomas Cook is a famous entrepreneurial character, like Isambard Kingdom Brunel in a way, who I also had studied and I loved. So I took that job. I learned about marketing. I learned about PR. I learned about the travel industry. I learned how to use all the systems. They gave me the job because I'd worked at British Airways after I'd left university. And I said I'd done that because I was interested in travel. And then I really wanted to work for Virgin. And I really wanted to work for Virgin because when I was at the Students' Union and I was president and I was in charge of entertainment, Virgin had sent, you know, recce people up to look at a band called Johnny and the Self-Abusers, who I'd signed a contract with to play in the beer bar. And Johnny and the Self-Abusers turned out to be Jim Kerr and Simple Minds. And Virgin had to pay 20 grand, with which we built a new cinema in order to get rid of them. So I had this all going on in my head at a young age.
That's brilliant.
And I was interested in railways and cars and planes, and I was very interested in the environment. My grandfather was a very early environmentalist. He wrote a book on vegetarianism and on healthy diets in 1940. Wow. While he was still inventing stuff. He invented the petrol electric car in 1927, saying one day, you know, people will care about things like emissions and fuel economy. And he invented an electromagnetic train in the 1930s, saying much the same thing. And when he died on his deathbed, when he gave me the logbook for the car, which is in the Science Museum in Swindon, he said, the age of this kind of thing is finally coming. And he said, the same is true of the Spheric car. And he said, you're the only one in the family who's bloody interested, so you have it.
You're like from a whole family of like engineers and mystics who can predict the future.
Well, my mother wasn't. My mother's family, the Cameron Macintoshes, she was quite mystical, actually. She came from, originally her family came from Tomatin in Inverness, and they were always very mystical. She was always very interested by the Bram Seer, who you won't have heard of.
No.
He was the Nostradamus of Scotland, and she always thought she might be descended from him.
Oh, wow.
And I do remember once I was on this loch called Loch and Dorn on holiday with all my friends, and my mother and I've rowed out to this island with a ruined castle in the middle, and I said, and I phoned my mum from this little island. There was a vague mobile signal, and I said, I feel really eerie on this island, Mum. It's a really strange feeling. I feel like I've been here before. And she said, where are you, Willie? I said, I'm in Loch and Dorb. I'm in the island in the middle of Loch and Dorb, right up in the Arctic tundra of the Grampians. And it was a warm summer's day, and we rode out there. And she said, oh, of course. That was where the Wolf of Badenoch lived. And of course, you're indirectly descended from the Wolf of Badenoch. So, you know, one's family life and education and such like does bring you to where you end up, usually in some circuitous way. But, you know, one of the things I keep telling people when I do career mentoring, which I do quite a lot of, things I say to people is, don't necessarily, if you have a vision of things you want to do, That doesn't mean to say you've got to get a job doing that at the age of 21 or 22, because life is circuitous. The most important thing is to gain experience of the world and work.
Yes.
And an employer will far more be interested in you if you've worked in McDonald's for the next year, rather than done nothing while you look for that golden job which you think your degree deserves.
I love what you
that is very good advice to people.
I love what you said a minute ago as well. You sort of talk when you said about you saw, just an opportunity arose. You saw the thing to go and work with the helicopters, and then went there and said, "Look, I'll guarantee you, I will stay here for 3 years." Like that kind of, I'll be committed. I'll work hard for you. I'm not just going to up sticks and leave. Particularly in the current climate, where there's obviously it's very, very challenging. And what I'm hearing from you is that, there isn't a straight line here. You have to just find an opportunity, commit to it, work for it, and just and evolve as things present themselves. Is that fair? And is that a fair reflection on what you've done?
Yeah, well, as Forrest Gump's mother said on her deathbed, life is a box of chocolates. You never know which one you're going to get. Fact of the matter is that the most important thing if you want to follow a dream is to be able to follow it. And you can't be able to follow it sitting, in your bedroom getting depressed.
Yeah.
You've got to go out there. Now, when I left university, there were 3 million unemployed in Britain, and it had a much smaller population than it does today. Population was 50 million and the 3 million, and they were mostly my age because we were the baby boomers coming through. And the country was in a sorry state. We just had the 3-day week, the winter of discontent, and an appalling litany of disaster in the British economy, with everything being, every company I worked for was nationalised to start with. I worked for British Airways after university, nationalised. I worked for Thomas Cook. It was nationalised. It was actually privatised while I worked there. So, it was a different world, and it was not an easy world to get a job. And it will be like that for the generation of the next 2 to 3 years. We are in for a very rough time. And it's really important that, if you want to do things in life, just get out there